Hello and welcome back. If you haven't viewed previous videos in the series and you're new to InfoPath, I recommend you view the previous videos in the series. This video focuses on tables. So what are tables used for? InfoPath uses tables for layout. Tables hold label names and the controls associated with the label name, for example a tick box, an options list, or a drop-down box list. You may have a need to use the same questions repeatedly. A repeating table and/or sections enable this functionality. For example, you might be organising an event, staff meetings, perhaps you want to submit travel arrangements or expenses. Using my restaurant bar quality assurance form as an example, the form filler can add multiple drinks purchases using a repeating category. Using my quality assurance audit form example to illustrate a repeating table, I can show you the housekeeping option. A form filler can choose whether the option applies to their data input need. If not, all the questions within that option can be ignored by not selecting it. In the event the table has been selected, the user can click the left-hand side round orange with a right arrowhead pointing right to remove the table. If the user later changes their mind, they simply click the round orange with right arrow head pointing icon again to add the table. Let's take a look at the Fields pane. Looking at the list of folders names, towards the bottom there is one named Beverage Charges. I click to expand and I click the Beverage Cost folder. Before I expand the contents, let's take a look at the folder. You've probably noticed a round blue circle with a white headed arrow pointing down. This tells me this is a repeating section. I click to make this active and immediately right click to select properties. In the Fields Groups and Properties window Data tab, I can see a tick in the repeating box. The key learning point here is the whole section repeats. Let's take a look at my example form. I can click Assessor's Beverage Charges and an additional beverage section is added. If I want to, I can repeat this. It's worth noting I can add multiple beverage items. For a moment, let's suppose the assessor takes a guess with them and the assessor is required to itemize their guest beverages separately. The question is, should I use a table and when should I use a section? In the fields you want to repeat fit one row, and in assessor's drink beverages they do. Then all I need is a repeating table. In my example, the assessor's guest drinks charges is a repeating section choice. It really isn't necessary because I don't have a large number of fields. I've added a repeating section for learning purposes. So how to add a repeating table? Let's switch back to design form. As you can see, I'm working on the form I began developing in early videos. Take a look at the Fields pane. You'll see I've added a group and fields. You may be asking, how do you create a group? I'll show you. I'll click my fields to activate and right click. I select and click Add. The same window opens to add fields. In the name box, type a name. In the type drop down list, I click to select group and then click OK. Let's take a look at the fields. I click the folder group I want the fields to be contained in. I right click to select and click Add. In the Fields and Group window, in the name box, I name the field, for example, quantity. In the data type drop-down list, I select whole number integral to hold a whole number. Next, I click OK. As I've already created this, I'll cancel. Let's look at the price field. I click to make this my active choice and right click to select properties. In the Fields and Group window, you can see the data type I've chosen is decimal double. I want this field to hold decimal numbers. Now the question remains, how do I create a repeating table? I place my mouse cursor at the bottom of the table. Using my keyboard, I tap my Enter key a couple of times to create space. Now I switch my attention back to the Fields pane. I click to make the Assessor's Beverage Charges folder my active choice. Holding my mouse button down, I drag the folder over to the newly created space and release the button. I'm now asked to select Repeating Table or Repeating Section with controls or Repeating Section. I click Repeating Table. I now have a repeating table. I can edit the fields labels, I can resize the fields, I can hide fields. Let's test the form. Looking at the ribbon Home tab and selecting Form Preview button, I'm able to review my work. I can type a drink name in to the beverage text box. In the quantity box, I can enter the number 2, and in the price box, the unit price, for example, £5.50. I'm going to manually type in the subtotal of £11. All the fields hold the right data types. I can add another round of drinks by clicking Insert Item. I can do so as many times as I wish. In further video presentation, I'm going to show you how to add calculations and a recalculating grand total. I'm going to close Form Preview and right-click the repeating table and select Properties. In the Repeating Table Data tab, I can change the bindings by clicking the Change Binding button. When I do, the Change Binding window opens. For the moment, I don't need to make any changes to the group I'm binding to, so I close the window by clicking OK. Clicking the Default Settings button, I can allow users to add or delete rows. I can also edit custom commands. Doing so enable a user to add and remove rows. Take a look at the command name. In this box, I can change the name if I think the default message isn't descriptive enough for my users. For example, remove, I'm going to change this to add remove beverage charge. I click OK to return to the Repeating Table Properties window. Take a look at the Insert button hint text. Insert item isn't descriptive for my intended users, so I edit this to read Insert Beverage Item. Let's take another look at how the form will look for my intended audience. I look up at the menu and in the Home tab I see the Preview Form button, so I click this. I scroll down to the beverage section and now I can see a blue square icon with a right arrowhead pointing down. I click this and I can see various options such as insert beverage costs below or after. This functionality enables me to order or remove beverage entries. Looking down to the left, I can see a blue square with an arrowhead pointing down. I click this to add another beverage item. As you can see, I add as many beverages. Let's take a look at optional section using my example form. I scroll down the form and stop at housekeeping. I see click here to add housekeeping assessment. I click this to open the housekeeping section. Looking at the left hand side, at the top of the section, I see round orange icon image with an arrow pointing in. I click to see a submenu to remove this section. I click to remove and housekeeping questions are removed. To begin developing this type of functionality, I'm going to use the form I've been building in previous videos. Let's take a look at Fields pane. Those with a keen eye will notice I've added two fields. One, Boolean, data type field named Floor Carpets Clean. The other data type is a rich text field named Notes. This is adequate to demo inserting an optional section. Earlier in this video, I inserted a repeating table. I like my housekeeping section to appear before beverage charges. To do this, I place my mouse cursor over the beverage charge table and below restaurant audit table. I press the Enter key a couple of times on my keyboard to create some space. I look up towards the ribbon and in the Home tab I see Controls. I click the black arrowhead to show the drop-down control choices I have available. In the container section, I see optional section. I click this. Now I have my section. I need to change the bindings. So I place my mouse cursor in the optional section. I right click and click change binding. The section binding window opens. I look for housekeeping group and click to bind, then click OK. Next, I place my mouse cursor in the optional section and press Enter key on my keyboard to create some space. I can drag the housekeeping group over from the fields pane and place in the optional section. As you see, this places the fields in the section with no formatting. I place my mouse cursor over the fields and look up at the ribbon. I click the Insert tab. I click the table's black arrowhead to show my available table options. I'm going to choose subheading 4-column table with emphasis. In the subheading, I add housekeeping title. I left click the floor carpet clean tick box to make this my active choice and hold the mouse button down and drag the tick box to place the tick box in the table. I type question label where both floor and carpets clean ? I'm not happy my label length forces the text to appear on 2 lines. Using my mouse, I click the cell border and drag to lengthen the cell size. I want my notes box to span the entire row. I place my mouse cursor in the bottom row and drag across to highlight. I look up at the ribbon and click Layout Table Tools tab. I click Merge button in the Merge section. Now I have a row spanning the entire table. I select the Notes field and drag the drop-down Notes field into this single span row. Above the row, I'm going to type Notes on my label. Looking down, I see floor carpets clean and notes. I delete floor carpet clean and notes. I also delete the section that contained the fields and labels. Next, I'm going to add a pop-up message for my users for tick box. I click to make the tick box active and then right click and click check box properties. This opens the checkbox properties window. I click the advanced tab and in the screen tick box I type yes, click here to place cross ... then click OK. I want to change the option default message to add housekeeping. I place my mouse cursor over the section at the bottom with the orange circle and white arrowhead. Then I click and select properties. When the window opens, I look in the data tab for show, insert, hint and text. I'm going to add the word housekeeping to the end of the message. I also don't want the section to appear when users launch the form. Looking at the default settings, I see an option for do not include the section in the form by default. I click this option. Immediately below, I see a tick box to allow users to insert section. I place a tick in the box and click OK. Now it's time to test the form. I click Form Preview, I click the Insert Housekeeping link and my section appears. I want to test removing the section. Moving my mouse cursor up to the left of the section, I see orange circle with a right arrowhead. I click and in the sub-menu I click Remove Housekeeping Group. I'm switching to the form preview to show you how this works. Let's step back and take a look at the original form. If I scroll down to the general section, I can read a question: was live music played, with a tick box and notes section. If I move my mouse cursor over the music question to the left, I can see a purple icon with 2 white squares. I click and sub-menu appears stating replace with sound system. Both options are held in a choice section and both choices are held within a single choice group. As you can see, there is only one option displayed. If I place a tick in the box, a rich text box appears for notes. Let's assume the restaurant has a sound system and not a live band. I remove the tick. I look and move my mouse pointer to the left, and there is an icon. When the mouse pointer hovers over the icon, it changes to a hand. I click, and in the submenu I click Replace with Sound System. Configuring choice sections can be complex, so I'm going to attempt to keep this as simple as I can. I'm going to switch to the form I'm currently developing. I'm going to repeat what I did earlier. I place my mouse cursor below my first table and hit Enter key on my keyboard. As I do this, space is created. Now I have the space, I look at the ribbon, and in the Home tab I click Controls drop down, and in the Containers section I click Choice Group. Next I look at the Fields pane. Looking at my fields, I can see they are not listed in the same order as my form. I click Group Folder to close them. Next, I click the Beverage Charges folder and right-click, and looking down I see the option to move down. I repeat until Beverage Charges are at the bottom, just like my form. I click Housekeeping Group and move that group down. Looking at my form and fields, they are now in the same order. It would have been far better for me to have sketched this out earlier to avoid this. Nevertheless, I wanted to show you how you can change fields order should you need to. Inevitably, you will at some stage. You may be asking, what's the difference between choice group and a repeating section? Repeating section repeats a choice. An example would be family membership to a club. The family may have one or more children. The repeating section would allow you to add multiple children, whereas a repeating choice group is one or the other. In my example, live band, music, or sound system. Now I'm going to rename my group folder to music. I do this by clicking to make this the active folder. Next, I right click to choose properties. In the properties name box, I name it music and click OK. Next, I'm going to rename the choice folder siblings, the first choice group folder live music, the second group folder sound system. I will now add fields for live music and sound systems groups. I click to make the live music folder active. I add a field named live music played, and the data type I change to a Boolean. This will be my tick box. The second field I will name live music notes. I change the data type to rich text. I repeat this for sound system group, but call the tick box Boolean sound system, and for the rich text box data type I name it sound system. Now I have my fields, I'm going to insert a table. I place the mouse cursor in the first choice section, the default. I look up at the ribbon, and in the Insert tab I see Custom Table button. I click this to add 3-row, 2-column table. I look at the Fields pane, then click Live Music Played field and drag the field over to the first row of my table. Next, I click to place the mouse cursor in the last row. I drag the mouse over to highlight both cells. I look up at the ribbon, and in the Layout tab I look for the Click the Merge button. Now I have a single row without a column. I return to the Fields pane and drag the Live Music Notes field into this row. Next, I highlight the labeled text and copy and paste to place the labeled text in the row above. Referring back to my finished form, let's take a look at that. I'm going to scroll down to the question, is live music played? And I'm going to place a tick in the box. I immediately see the notes text box is revealed. I'm going to show you how to do this. This rule type is formatting, and the conditioning is live music played false. I click the Notes field to make this active. I look at the Ribbon Home tab and click the Add Rule button. Looking at the bottom of the list, I see Manage Rules. I click this. The rule pane opens. Seeing the New button, I click to reveal the list. I choose Formatting. In the Conditioning section, I see clickable blue text with the word None. I click this. The condition window opens. In the first drop-down box, I click to select Live Music Played. The middle drop-down states is equal to. I leave this as it is. In the last drop-down, I click Drop-down List to select False and click OK to close. Below, I see Rule Type Formatting. I'm pleased, so it's time to test my work. I click the Home tab in the ribbon and click the Form Preview button. Scrolling down to the General section, I see Notes section displayed. This isn't what I wanted to happen. Let me switch back to Design Form and review the rule. Take a look at the bottom of the rule under the Formatting section and you'll see a tick box for Hide this control. I place a tick in the box. I click the Form Preview button. When the form opens, I scroll down to the question, Is live music played? I tick the box and the Notes text box appears. I've decided I don't need the Notes label. I switch back to Design Form. I delete the label. The text box position isn't right. I move the mouse cursor over the column division. I hold the mouse button down and drag to resize the table cell. I want to add some shading. I highlight the entire table and click the Ribbon Layout tab. I see the Color section has a shading button. I click to view the options and pick a color of my choice. I'm happy, so I return to the Form Preview. Formatting is good. I test the switch to sound system. Not surprisingly, empty. I return to the Design Form to repeat the steps above to add sound system fields. Thank you for viewing. We've covered an awful lot of ground here. Future videos will be singular in nature. For example, the next video will cover table calculation. The following presentation to that will cover publishing the form to SharePoint site.